This webinar is being organized under Institutional Development Plan (KADVASU), sponsored by ICR New Delhi. Our today's speaker for the webinar is Dr. Anish Yadav, presently working as Professor and ICR National Fellow at Division of Veterinary Parasitology, Faculty of Veterinary Sciences and Animal Husbandry, Sher-e-Kashmir University of Agriculture Sciences and Technology, Jammu. So parasitic diseases are of utmost importance in Indian subcontinent, especially due to favorable conditions for survival of developmental stages of parasites. Today's webinar will cover the protozoan parasitic diseases of economic importance in livestock. As far as Dr. Yadav is concerned, Dr. Anish Yadav did his BVSc and AH and MVSc in veterinary parasitology from CCS HU Hisar and PhD from Squash Jammu. For the last 21 years, he is actively involved in teaching veterinary parasitology for undergraduate and postgraduate students. So presently, he is working on ICR National Fellow Project entitled Development of Sensitive and Specific Diagnostic Assay for Detection of Warble Fly Infestation in Goats and Eradication of the Disease from Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Yadav has published various research papers, he's authored one book, 7 book chapters, and 5 manuals on livestock parasites. He is also a recipient of prestigious Dr. J.P. Dubey Young Scientist Award, Dr. D.P. Banerjee Oration Award, Dr. N.S. Rupra Oration Award. He has received appreciation award by World Association for Advancement of Veterinary Parasitology at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2017. So Dr. Yadav is also a reviewer of various scientific journals of national and international repute. So now I invite Dr. Anish Yadav to deliver the webinar. So Dr. Yadav, please start your webinar lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Bal. I am audible?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, my sincere thanks to GADVASU, the organizers, for giving me the opportunity to interact with you. So, I am Anish Yadav, working at SCOS Jammu. Today, I will discuss on the topic diagnosis and control of economically important protozoan diseases of livestock. If we talk about the protozoa, they are the unicellular eukaryotic organisms we know very well. And animal protozoan diseases, we will discuss mainly two types, hemoprotozoan and intestinal. And in that category also, I have selected only economically important diseases, that too mainly in the North Indian parts, Punjab, Haryana, J&K, Delhi. So two types of protozoan will be discussed only, and the major parasites which we will cover are Trypanosoma, Babesia, Theileria, Eimeria and Cryptosporidium under intestinal group. And in addition, rickettsial diseases has also been taken, mainly the anaplasmosis and ehrlichiosis, because their treatment, diagnosis, that is, you can say, in parallel with the hemoprotozoan. So considering the significance of these things, only important diseases are taken into consideration, and we will discuss that. The first and foremost is the trypanosomiasis, that it is caused by the organism Trypanosoma evensi, which is a leaf-like organism. We can easily see in the slide. The vertebrates, the cattle, buffalo, equine, and dog, camel, they are the host. The parasite is present as intracellular parasites in between the RBCs, and transmission of the disease occurs because of the arthropods and mainly the tabenid groups. That is the Tabenus and Stomoxis are the flies. This is the fly which are responsible for the transmission of the disease. And this fly, it has a characteristic feeding habit, that is the interrupted feeding habit. You can see on this picture that the flies, they are sitting on the legs of the animal, this picture, and they will bite here. In that process, they will take their blood meal, and then they will move to the next animal. So this habit of these flies, interrupted feeding habit, is responsible for the transmission of the diseases. And mainly we will discuss the organism Trypanosoma evensi, and naturally this is transmitted mechanically by these flies. So this is the life cycle of trypanosomes. I will take just general view. The flies are there and they are infected. different developmental stages, and then this infective stage will be passed on to the vertebrate host. Then in the vertebrate host, these protozoan parasite will undergo the binary fission, and likewise the disease is established in the vertebrate host animals like cattle, buffalo, camel, and equine. Then coming to the disease pathogenesis, if we talk about the harms or the pathogenesis caused by the trypanosomes, we can classify in different major groups. And the first and foremost is the anemia. And anemia in trypanosoma occur because of the mechanical destruction of RBCs by the parasites of the RBCs. Then there is erythrophagocytosis, hemolysis of RBC, and then anemia is due to intravascular colloid osmotic pressure. So these are different factors which are responsible for the anemia in the trypanosomiasis diseases. Initially, the disease is acute phase, then naturally with the prolonged cases, they moves to the chronic phase, and that chronic phase leads to the emaciation. Splenomegaly, formation of arterial plaques, and edema of dependent parts. That is another important lesion of the trypanosomiasis, edema on dependent parts. Hemorrhages, and then the hypoglycemia. The parasite is responsible for the hypoglycemia. Then these were the pathological points. So if we talk about the clinical signs, mainly we will discuss just the main features so that that can be helpful to the undergraduate students, and as told by Dr. Bal, that many veterinarian friends, they have also joined. So I have prepared the presentation just like that way. So if we talk about the clinical signs, the disease is very important in equines. The donkeys are comparatively resistant, and the disease it occurs in two forms mainly, that is the mild form and then the severe cases. In the mild form, the disease is the symptoms are intermittent fever, naturally because of the variant surface glycoproteins, antigenic variations is there. So that is the fever is intermittent. Then continuously the disease persists, then there is a weight loss followed by anemia, edema of the dependent parts, enlargement of the lymph nodes, and petechial hemorrhages. So we can see in the side pictures that there is a typical sign of trypanosomiasis in equine. Then testicular edema, very beautiful feature of trypanosomiasis, and these are the petechial hemorrhages lesions, which we can easily consider that this is a case of trypanosomiasis. And in severe cases, the neurological signs like ataxia uh, and then paralysis of the hindquarters are also recorded in the equines. If we talk about the cattle and buffalo, here the difference is that in cattle and buffalo, they generally act as a reservoir of the infection to the equines, but the disease occurs in different forms: acute cases and the chronic cases. Acute cases, I have seen when I was a UG student, many cases I myself have seen in Haryana, particularly the acute cases in the buffaloes. And these acute cases of trypanosomiasis are just like that of the, you can say, poisoning. Many times farmers get confused that either somebody has poisoned the animal or the snake bite, because the symptoms appear immediately and the death is very frequent in these cases. So the important symptoms of acute cases are uh, eyes are staring and wide open, the animal is very furious type, hard breathing, profuse salivation, frequent micturition, bellowing, twitching of muscles, and then collapse and death. When these symptoms are observed, definitely the farmer has a perception that it is a poisoning cases, or you can say maybe snake bite or like that. But in trypanosomiasis, this disease, these symptoms are quite common. And we can say that the disease occurrence that can be correlated with the season prevalence, because see, these acute cases mainly occur during the monsoon and post monsoon season. If cattle and buffalo, they are having these symptoms, and that because of the conducive environment for the flies, so in these two seasons many cases of acute trypanosomiasis can be observed in the cattle and buffalo. But generally the chronic cases are observed, uh, and where the symptoms are, naturally we can see the animal on our right side, that it is dull, sleepy, emaciated, and then that fever, and if the same thing persists for a long time, then the death of the animal occurs. In case of dog, naturally the fever is there, edema of head and throat. This is a typical symptoms of trypanosomiasis in dog. Edema of head and throat, then followed by corneal opacity, blindness, and because of edema of larynx, there is change in the voice of the animal, and many times we get confused it with the rabies, but it is a case of trypanosomiasis. Then comes the diagnosis, because mainly we have covered those cases, those animals or those species which are encountered in the field. So diagnosis is very important for this, and certain we can say the basic knowledge of parasitology and the basic knowledge of the techniques, we can do the diagnosis easily. First and foremost is the history of the disease, prevalence, cases in the particular area, or presence of tapered flies. That is one thing. Then clinical signs, because in equine these are the emaciation, intermittent fever, the edema. They are typical clinical signs which gives us a clue that the animal may be suffering with the trypanosoma. Then again, very important, high incidence of the disease occurs during the monsoon and post monsoon. So that's mainly the July and November in the North India. These are the symptoms which the signs on basis of which we can do the diagnosis. But laboratory examinations are also there, and quite you can say effective tools are there. First and foremost is the wet blood film. Directly take the one drop of blood, put under the microscope, and organisms, trypanosomes can be seen moving under the microscopes. This is a simple technique. Just put the single drop of blood on the slide and see, and we can get the diagnosis. Even in the field level, we can see this wet blood film is useful when parasitemia is high, naturally, because large number of parasites are, so that is the acute cases, it is quite effective. But the disadvantage of this technique is that it is not much helpful where the parasitemia is low, mainly the chronic sign and the latent cases. The another helpful technique is the blood smear examination. Naturally, we have taken the blood to our lab. We can prepare two type of smears: thick smears and thin smears. And this these smears can be prepared, then can be stained with the common routinely available stains like Leishman stain or Giemsa stain. And then the parasites can be seen under the microscope under the high power typical leaf-like parasites as shown in the picture. But these techniques, they are quite effective in equine and dog, where the parasitemia or the number of the parasites are quite high, and where it can be routinely performed there. But in case of cattle, buffalo, it is not of much help because less number of the parasites. So that is not effective. So thick blood smear can be prepared, and here the important thing is that if we want to see the presence of these parasites, then the uh, ear and tail tip, that blood should be preferred for the diagnosis. And see, at this junction, when I am discussing this diagnosis, I am remembering my late renowned professor, Dr. D.P. Banerjee Saab. When he taught me this trypanosomes, and particularly during the graduation time, I still remember what he told me. He told me a story of present diagnosis of trypanosomiasis in NRC equines use when the case parasitemia was low. He used to, I still remember, he told me us that if the parasitemia is low and you are suspecting that the animal is suffering with trypanosomes, infuse a bottle of glucose. Naturally, the disease causes hypoglycemia, and once you introduce glucose to the animal, the parasites who are sitting at the corners for the food, they will come into the circulation, because and they need the food. And so that after infusion of that glucose, you can see the parasitemia, or you can detect the parasites in the blood smears. So that is also effective. Then another technique which is very handy and highly sensitive diagnostic test, that is the concentration technique, or we say it is a Buffy-Coat method. I think this is as reliable as all modern tools. If we perform Buffy coat method, the trips diagnosis can be done very easily and it has high sensitivity. And it is nothing. We have the blood, we do the centrifugation at high speed, around 10,000 rpm for 3 to 4 minutes, and then buffy coat is formed in these tubes. Take the material of this buffy coat layer, transfer this buffy coat material to the slide, then prepare the smear, and then easily we can do the better diagnostic. And definitely this is a very high sensitive diagnostic test at the field level. Then another examinations we can perform at the tissue level or body fluid level, that is lymph node smear examinations. We can take the aspirates from the lymph nodes and prepare the smear, do the routine staining technique. Similarly, examination of cerebrospinal fluid where the nervous symptoms are there, or you can say in case of you can say dogs where corneal opacity is there, aqueous humor can also be taken, and these fluids can also be examined for the presence of trypanosomes. Another chemical test, you can say different chemical tests, or they are also available. Animal inoculation test, they can also be performed. And definitely nowadays so many recent tools are there, high molecular tools like PCR, RAPD PCR, RFLP, all different tests, they are available in the labs. And they, depending on different genes, primers, uh, formed like that way, these advanced techniques can also be used for the confirmation of the field test at the lab also. Then comes the treatment for trypanosomiasis. For trypanosomiasis, antricide pro salts, quinapyramines, they are considered as the drug of choice. And in this, two salts are there: antricide methyl sulfate and antricide methyl chloride. Methyl sulfate has the therapeutic efficacy, chloride has the prophylactic efficacy. And these quinapyramines, they are available in every corner of the country and easily available at all shops. So this is the best drug, and we can use at any place. And I think this is the drug of choice for quinapyramine, this trypanosomiasis antricide pro salts. Other drugs like suramine, old drugs, they were used. Then isometamidum chloride, diaminogen acesurate, berenil, they can also be used. But the important precautions for diaminogen acesurate is that it must be used in the deep intramuscular route. Then the latest drug, melarsomin dihydrochloride, no, that we say simalersen, that is also the very effective drug. And it has the advantage that it can cross blood brain barrier, so it can be used in both acute cases and chronic cases. Again, the precaution is that it must be given deep intramuscular route. The control, naturally, if we want to control the disease in our area, so treatment is one aspect, but another comes the prophylaxis. So here the uh, tabanids, they act as a vector. So vector control is the first and foremost target, and that can be done using the smoke in the areas or in the stable where the animals are being kept. Or you can say fly nets can also be used for the control of these vectors, flies. But practically speaking, it's a little bit difficult, but they can be tried. So that's all for trypanosomiasis. And the next disease which we will discuss is the babesiosis. Again, a hemoprotozoan disease. And the first under this babesiosis is the bovine babesiosis or bovine pyroplasmosis. This bovine babesiosis, there are so many species, but we will discuss only the which are present in our country, or mainly associated with the bovine pyroplasmosis. That is bovine bovis, Babesia bovis and Babesia bisemina. This Babesia is a intraerythrocytic pyroplasm. These are present in the RBCs. And again, this is a tick-borne disease. The vectors for this disease are Rhipicephalus microplus. These are the one host tick. And the transmission is the trans-ovarian. These are the pyroplasms present in the RBC. If we talk about the life cycle of Babesia, I will not go much in detail. The only thing is that the sporozoites, they are passed. These sporozoites, infective stage, are passed by the you can say larvae, because here in Babesia bisemina and bovis, bovine babesiosis, it is a transovarian transmission. So the females after laying the eggs, the adult females, it dies after laying the egg. So the larvae, they are infective. The larvae, because one host tick, all the stages they are present in the same host. So these sporozoites, they are transmitted by these larvae, infected larvae. Then these sporozoites enter into the RBCs, undergo the asexual reproduction, mainly schizogony in the RBCs. And when they undergo schizogony, they go repeated multiplications. And that is the stage which is harmful to the animal, the repeated multiplication of these organisms in the vertebrate host. And that's where the life cycle is completed. Sexual stages occurs in the vector host, whereas the asexual stages occurs sexual stages occurs in the invertebrate host, that is the vector, yeah, ticks. But in cattle and vertebrates, asexual stages are there. So then coming to the pathogenesis, here the babesiosis, they show the inverse age resistance. That means that adults are more affected, whereas the young ones, young cows, they are less affected. That's mainly because they get the maternal antibody that is associated. Inverse age resistance is associated with the bovine babesiosis. Then if you talk about the breed of the animals, so exotic breed animals, they are more susceptible than the indigenous breed animals. In the pathogenesis, anemia is the main pathogenic effect caused by the Babesia organism, and that anemia is because of opsonization of RBC or mechanical destruction of RBC. What we saw in the life cycle, that when these merozoites, they multiply rapidly, they cause destruction of RBCs, and the destruction of RBCs, we very well know that the common symptom of bovine babesiosis is hemoglobinuria. So that is same way anemia is also there, and another factor for anemia, mechanical destruction of RBC. Then increased osmotic fragility of RBC cause cell lysis, and that also leads to the anemia. Then clinical signs, which they are just as there are certain few typical signs which were associated with trypanosomiasis on the same pattern. The typical symptoms are associated with the bovine babesiosis. First and foremost is very high fever. Animal will have very high fever under 104, 5, 6 degree Fahrenheit. Then anemia is quite common, and then hemoglobinuria. So particularly, I want to tell to the students that this hemoglobinuria, coffee colored urine, that means hemoglobinuria means coffee colored urine. Easily you can see in the right side of the pic that animal is passing this color of this type of the urine and bottle you can see. So this is the coffee color urine, and its presence itself at least give you much clue that the animal is suffering with the bovine babesiosis. So we must remember that. Anemia, we can see the pale mucous membrane and all these. That anemia is also a typical sign of this high fever babesiosis. Then in chronic cases, these were the cases mainly observed in acute, but in chronic cases, the symptoms are emaciation, lacrimation, and decreased milk production that is associated with the bovine babesiosis. Then the diagnosis, just we discussed that presence of typical coffee color urine or that type of urine. You can see both type of urine, fresh urine, normal urine, and hemoglobinuria type of urine, how they look like. It has been shown in these containers. Then another diagnosis is naturally the blood smear examination. We can take the blood, prepare the routine smear, thin smear we can prepare, and presence of typical pyroplasms. Typical presence of these typical pyroplasms in RBCs can be seen using the Giemsa stain or Leishman stain. And nowadays, these PCR techniques, just like other organisms, also all advancements are available with the Babesia organisms also. And if we talk about the treatment, I think as antricide prosalt was the drug of choice for this trypanosomiasis. So for the bovine babesiosis, diaminogen aceturate at the dose rate of 3 to 5 milligram per kg body weight is drug of choice. Imidocarb is also very effective. Then moving on to the next hemoprotozoan disease, that is theileriosis. This theileriosis is caused by Theileria annulata and Theileria orientalis. Again, it is a intracellular hemoprotozoan parasite, just like Babesia. This is present. This parasite is also present in the RBCs, and it is also transmitted by ticks. But the difference is that here it is the Hyeloma anatolicum tick in our part of the country, uh, uh, which is a three-host tick. And the for bovine babesiosis, it was Buphalus microplus, Rhipicephalus buphalus microplus, which was one host tick. Here the transmission is transstadial type of transmission. In babesiosis, it was the transovarian, and transstadial transmission means it is stage to stage transmissions, mean different stages can transmit the infection. This is the life cycle. If we make a difference between Babesia life cycle and Theileria life cycle, the only major difference is that there the organism, the sporozoite, was undergoing the asexual reproduction in case of the RBCs, and but here the organisms is first entering into the lymphocytes and then undergoing the asexual reproduction. That's why definitely we have studied the stage coach blue bodies, KBB, and KBB is formed in the lymphocytes because first the sporozoite enters into the lymphocyte and then it multiplies, whereas in Babesia the sporozoite directly enter into the RBCs and then it multiply. Rest is just majorly it is same like that of the uh, bovine babesia life cycle, that the asexual stages they are present in the vertebrate host, and the sexual stages of the life cycle they are present in the vector host. Then if we talk about the clinical signs of the disease, here also the typical signs are there. High rise of temperature is there, but another important symptom is that prescapular lymph node enlargement. This is typically associated with the theileriosis. Right side of the pic we can see that the prescapular lymph nodes they are enlarged. So that is a typical clinical sign of theileriosis. Other symptoms are anorexia, dullness, decreased milk yield, anemia. So these are there. Then corneal opacity. Yeah, this is a symptoms which is observed many a times, because recently we also conducted a study of on the cattle for the hemoprotozoan. So we could find the cases of corneal opacity in cattle, and they were diagnosed as Theileria positive by the molecular techniques. Then later when they were treated with the uh, antiprotozoal, these blindness, corneal blindness was recovered, but that needs long duration treatment as compared to the normal duration treatment in case of corneal opacity. Here I have mentioned the epidemiology is the imported cases. Regarding this point, I want to highlight that, see, if you see all these vector-borne disease, the most important thing is that a disease, vector-borne disease occurs in a particular area where there is a availability or presence of that particular vector. Uh, I want to take the example of Theileria infection, and that too in the context of the Jammu and Kashmir. In Jammu, particularly, the cases of theileriosis are not there because the vector Hyeloma anatolicum is not there. So, but still the cases of theileriosis, they are recorded in the state. Very few cases. The reason is that naturally the Punjab is the adjoining state, and the animals they are kept by the farmers. They are high yielders, exotic breed animals. So people are purchasing the animals. Dairy owners they are purchasing the animal from the neighboring state, means Punjab. And in Punjab, definitely if we see the literature from Gadwasu itself, presence of Hyeloma and theileriosis in both equine, Theileria equine, and in the cattle also, they has been recorded. And these animals, when they are transported to the Jammu and Kashmir, many a times we have observed that they are positive with the theileriosis. The reason is that when they are transported, the animal comes under the stress and the disease get flare up. So what I mean that a disease is not occurring in a particular area, but still we are exposing that area to a disease which in near future may results into a lot of problem to the farmers. So the policymakers, the means certain things should be sorted out, so that at the you can say at the borders or while the transportation, certain tests should be performed, so that these cases may be minimized. Then if you talk about the diagnosis of this theileriosis, just like babesiosis, we may prepare the thin blood smears and small pyroplasms, very small pyroplasms, you can see they can be seen in the erythrocytes. Then KBB, yeah, Koch blue body structures, they are seen in the lymphocytes. That is another typical diagnostic feature with the theileriosis. And this KBB can be seen in the lymph node aspirates as well as the blood smears. Then presence of this prescapular lymph node itself is a clinical symptoms. And then if the death is there in the postmortem lesions, the necrotic ulcers, punch necrotic ulcers in the abomasum, that is another feature of theileriosis, that in the abomasum these symptoms can be observed, and they are, you can say, pathognomic for bovine theileriosis. Therefore, the treatment, just like the Beranil, or you can say diaminogen acesurate, was the drug of choice for babesiosis. For theileriosis, buparvocon is the drug of choice. Only problem is that it's a little bit costly, but still it is a drug of choice and highly effective. If not available in certain areas, oxytetracycline, long-acting oxytetracycline, they can also be tried. And commercially available vaccine is also available, available with the name of Rakshavec, manufactured by Indian Immunologicals, and 3 ml of the dose is given to one animal, and the immunity persists for 1 year. Then coming back to the equine pyroplasmosis, and equine, two types of organisms are there which causes pyroplasmosis, that is Theileria equi and Babesia cabelli. Uh, and the vector is Hiloma anatolicum Theileria equi, and Rhipicephalus buphilus microplus for Babesia cabelli. So symptoms, they are quite similar to those you can say cattle, but one important difference is that here hemoglobinuria is not recorded. Many times students get confused that hemoglobinuria will also be in the you can say equine pyroplasmosis, but here hemoglobinuria is not there. Fever is common. Colic is an important symptom in equine pyroplasmosis. Then high fever, depression, dyspnea, tachycardia, these are again important symptoms. And the diagnosis, just like other protozoan disease, blood smears can be prepared, but here the typical this Maltese cross, this is a characteristic feature of Theileria equi, which is observed the pyroplasm pattern, 4 pyroplasms arranged opposite to each other in the form of Maltese cross. It is a typical pattern of Theileria equi. And on the right side, we can say Babesia cabelli organisms, paired pyroplasms can also be recorded. Then advanced techniques, PCR, other techniques, they are also as effective as for the other protozoans. They are also available for this disease also. Treatment, Beranil is quite effective drug. Imidocarb is also effective drug, and they can be tried for the equine pyroplasmosis. Then we will move to the rickettsial diseases. And this rickettsial group, we will discuss mainly this these rickettsial organisms. Naturally, they are not hemoprotozoans, but they are the hemoparasites, because these parasites, they are present in the blood. And under this, two important parasites we will study. That is, one is the two diseases, anaplasmosis and ehrlichiosis. If we talk about the anaplasmosis, it is caused by Anaplasma marginale and Anaplasma centrale, depending on the location of the organism in the RBC. Just like Babesia, Theileria, this Anaplasma is also present in the RBC. And the vector for this anaplasmosis, ticks, different ticks, they act as a vectors for this disease. And then the host, ruminant, cattle, the camel, horses, etc. Then if you talk about the route of transmission, the tick bite, naturally it is an important route of transmission. Then blood transfusion, that may also be the reason of disease transmission. And then if we talk about the life cycle, same way, the organisms multiply by binary fissions into the RBCs, forming the inclusion bodies. And then if we talk about the significance of this disease, naturally, if you see the reports from different universities, different colleges, we find that the cases of anaplasmosis are increasing day by day in every state, every corner of the country. Particularly, even we performed just recently a study in Jammu and Kashmir. We found the anaplasmosis was highest prevalence among the hemoparasites, we can say like that way. Similarly, if you see the reports of even Punjab, Haryana, cases of these rickettsial diseases, they are increasing more in number than the number of the hemoprotozoans. And nowadays, the concurrent infections, generally the anaplasma in combination with babesia or maybe theileria, they are recorded. And what happens? These anaplasma and these when these cases concurrent infections occur, many a times the subclinical infections are there, and that makes a problem for the uh, a vet or a practitioner in the diagnosis, because he's thinking of one disease in routine, he's thinking of either babesiosis, theileriosis, he's using the drug of choice, and anaplasmosis. Recently we had a hard history where the subclinical cases of anaplasmosis and babesiosis were there. The vet was doing the treatment for last, you can say, 15 to 20 days, but nothing was resolved. When the sample was transported to our lab, we did a little bit advanced technique, molecular technique we performed. We could easily find the presence of both the organism. The recommendations were conveyed to the vet, and within 2 to 3 days, we got the feedback that animal has been treated, because the concurrent infection of anaplasma and babesia was occurring. So the subclinical cases of anaplasmosis with other hemoprotozoans, that creates a problem. So that while dealing with the diagnosis of these protozoans, that should be kept in mind that subclinical cases of these may occur. Diagnosis: if we perform presence of typical small dot-like structures in the RBCs, can be seen by routine thin smear examinations. Advanced techniques, PCR, ELISA, CFT, they are also available with the anaplasmosis disease. Then the drug of choice is tetracycline, definitely for anaplasmosis. But what I have seen with while interacting with the vets or while seeing such type of cases, long-acting tetracyclines, that is more effective, because generally the vets, they visit the farmers once in 3 or 4 days, and normal tetracycline is required daily. To avoid that daily shot, we may go for the long acting tetracyclines. The results are very encouraging, particularly for the anaplasmosis, and that in the subclinical cases. Long acting tetracyclines at 6 to 10 milligram per kg body weight are highly effective. And definitely the control includes control of the ticks. These are different peaks, presence of anaplasma marginale in RBCs. Then, if we talk about all these discussed vector-borne disease, mainly we can say the tick-borne diseases, the question comes, ki, okay, we can treat the hemoprotozoan disease or rickettsial disease, but what is the way of management of tick? That is important. If we manage the tick, naturally these diseases can be managed. So the management of tick is more important for controlling the hemoprotozoan disease. Definitely, number of chemicals, group of organochlorine, phosphates, carbamates, ivermectins, large number of chemicals are available in the market for the control of these ticks. Another managemental practices are also there, but the question comes, what the farmers are doing, what the field veterinarians are doing, and what the problem they are facing. See, because of the continuous use of these all acaricides, tick resistance has developed. And when we can easily see in this upper pic also, where the globe has been depicted, all red area, that means there is a complete resistance, and India falls in that category. Means, and if we talk about the Indian status, recently article was published in veterinary parasitology, and we come across all reports from Jammu Kashmir, Punjab, Ludhiana itself, IVRI, Mathura. You go to any corner, Hisar, Even the latest report from the Palampur, every part of the country is having a problem of resistance of the chemicals against ticks. And if you see this, I know this pic is not so clear, but this article, if we refer this article of to note 1919, recent article of veterinary parasitology, this is a comprehensive resistance. Even you can see the tick and crows means in which state which drug is resistant or which drug is not resistant. So every drug is resistant nowadays against the ticks. That is a problem. That is a problem. Just if we take the example of Jammu and Kashmir, in our department also, Dr. Godara, he's working on it. So he has done a lot of comprehensive study. You can see different districts of Jammu and Kashmir, and almost all acaricides they are resistant. And see, all where the little bit more modernization, Jammu, Samba, Rajouri, where there is a more modernization, the resistance is more. So management of tick is a problem because the resistance is. And if you visit the farmer, he will tell in general, sir, we make the 5 applications of the acaricides, we make the 7 applications of acaricides, and that to all indiscriminate way of doing that. So that is the responsible for this resistance. So on basis of the literature, what I could find even from different parts, Punjab and everywhere, what we could find that uh, resistance is available against almost all drugs, even amitraz, what I am saying. But comparatively, if we talk, amitraz is little bit safer, and safer means that less resistance is there. And so we can say that we must switch from the deltamethrin, cypermethrin, and other. Even if you talk about the ivermectin, recently the reports of resistance has been there from the Ludhiana itself, from our Jammu itself. So everything is resistant. So amitraz even we can recommend to the farmers, and that we are recommending in our region of Jammu and Kashmir. And advantage is that no resistance, but disadvantage is a little bit costly. So while dealing with this tick treatment, the resistance status we must keep in our mind. And then another is the management. That is the most important, because see, if we see the habit of the ticks, they multiply in cracks and crevices. These type of places, these cracks and crevices, the things or objects which are lying for a long period, these ticks they are hiding themselves in these places, and then they are multiplying, laying the eggs. Even in these type of walls, these cracks and crevices, they must be plastered, or they must be filled so that the ticks do not have the place for breeding. Even in the organized farms where these animals are tied, those rings at those iron rings where they are placed, there are certain holes, because I have seen myself in our form also, this university form, that was a reason that the ticks were hiding at these places. When they were filled, the problem was minimized. So that has to be kept in the mind. Then this was all about the you can say bovine or equine hemoprotozoans. Then we will switch to the two canine hemoprotozoan diseases also. The first is the canine babesiosis, which is caused by two organisms, Babesia gibsoni, Babesia canis. And then the vector is Rhipicephalus sanguinus, a tick. And the different symptoms, the disease canine babesiosis is observed as hyperacute, acute, chronic, and the same, the fever is there, and then letharginess, hepatomegaly, then convulsions, chronic infections, they becomes more common slowly and slowly. And then definitely the animal is not feeling comfortable, and ultimately the diagnosis then done with the help of blood examinations. And the treatment here, what we have to keep in mind, that for the canine babesiosis, diminogene acetyl is not preferred. It is the imidacarb dipropionate. It is considered as a drug of choice for canine babesiosis, and 2 doses at 14 days interval is recommended for the cases of the canine babesiosis. These are the pics of pyroplasms present in the RBC. Then the next disease is canine ehrlichiosis. Definitely Ehrlichia is a rickettsial organism, just like Anaplasma. And what the problem Anaplasma is causing, clinically speaking, in the bovine, same the Ehrlichia is causing in canine. So many cases, you see the reports, you see the literature, you talk to the vets, you talk to the
नहीं आ रही इधर,
practitioners.
नहीं आ
So
रही।
ehrlichiosis is a major problem nowadays. It's a rickettsial disease. The site of predilection for this parasite is the monocytes. The vector is again brown dog tick, and same problem like in the anaplasma was there with the concurrent infection of Babesia canis and Ehrlichia canis. They are seen and they cause a problem. Then the pathogenesis, if you talk here, the multi-system involvement is more common in Ehrlichia canis. Acute infection mainly thrombocytopenia, pancytopenia.
Hello sir, good afternoon.
Chronic,
Very much beneficial.
the chronic infections are also recorded. Then if you talk about the symptoms, uh, different, definitely the multi-system involvement is there. So many organs are involved, but the main symptoms are, you can say fever, loss in body weight, lymphadenopathy, then bilateral epistaxis, nasal bleeding, that is a quite common feature of ehrlichiosis, petechial hemorrhages, that is also common, then decrease in platelet count and hemorrhages. These are associated symptoms of Ehrlichia infection in canine. Diagnosis, presence of typical morula stays. We can see presence of typical morula stays in the cytoplasm of affected monocytes. This the morula stays present in the monocytes. That is a quite diagnostic feature of ehrlichiosis while doing the thin blood smears. Advanced techniques, PCR, other techniques, they are quite available and can be performed at the labs. The symptoms, typical symptoms, again, I will tell that epistaxis and presence of petechial patches on the skin, they are associated with canine ehrlichiosis. And for the treatment, doxycycline is the drug of choice, and this drug is given orally for 21 to 28 days. If given 5 milligram per kg body weight, it is given twice daily. And if it is given 10 milligram per kg body weight, it is given only once. But the duration of the drug must be for at least 21 days or up to 28 days. Tetracycline can also be tried, but for the longer duration. Another disease is the canine hepatogenosis. In canines, the hepatozoon canis is the parasite and transmitted by the Rhipicephalus sanguinus. In the cytoplasm of neutrophils, typical gammons are seen. This is the characteristic feature of the smear. Clinical signs mainly includes fever, gait, and muscular weakness. The muscular weakness is mainly associated with the hepatozoon canis infections. Diagnosis, I told you that the presence of gammons in the blood smears can be seen in neutrophils, and the treatment, again, it is a doxycycline given at a rate of 5 milligram for around 14 days. So this was all about blood protozoans, or rather I can say hemoparasites, that included protozoa and rickettsia. Now I will cover only two intestinal protozoa, which are quite uh, economic importance for the animals. First one is the cryptosporidiasis. The disease is cryptosporidiasis caused by the cryptosporidium parasite, and here the diarrhea is there in the mainly a disease of young ones, that too particularly I would say 15 days to 30 days of age. No doubt other is younger ones or further elder ones, they can also be affected, but mainly if we study different diarrheal diseases, we can say like this rotavirus, this rotavirus infection, E. coli infections, coccidia infections. But the typical symptom associated with cryptosporia is that 15 days to 30 days is the age of the calf, which is most vulnerable. And the symptom is, it is not, you can say typical diarrhea, it is a mucoid diarrhea. That is the important feature associated with cryptosporidium, that these animal will pass the diarrhea, but it will having mucus. Animal, definitely they have fever and lethargy. And the another important you can say application of this disease cryptosporidiasis is that four species are there, and the cryptosporidium parvum, that is zoonotic, and these subtypes are also there, we will not go in that. But this cryptosporidium parvum is zoonotic, and the infection can be transferred to the human beings. This is the life cycle, we will not discuss that. The clinical signs, as I discussed, young cows, they are highly affected. The diarrhea is typical pale yellow, but only mucus, that is the characteristic symptoms. And the diagnosis, the routine Jaden staining, acid fast staining we can perform, the Jean Nelson staining and typical oocyst present, 5 micron size they can be seen in the Jaden stainings. And the treatment, no effective treatment is there for the cryptosporidium, but still drugs like azithromycin, nitazoxanide, and parmomycin, they can be tried. Even amprolium, people are using for certain severe cases, and improvement is recorded for the cryptosporidium. Another important is the coccidiosis. It is very important disease as a protozoan disease, intestinal. The thing is that what I want to mention here for the coccidiosis is that no doubt everybody of us know that coccidia is a problem of young ones. Maybe it is a lamb, maybe kids, maybe something. And we treat those cases. But here what I am discussing more about the coccidiosis in heifers, because I have myself recorded 15-20 cases in our area of these coccidiosis in heifers. What is that? We have seen that in heifers diarrhea is there, and you can see the hind limb, bloody hind limb, means because naturally the feces has soiled the hind limb, and that feces is having the blood. So these type of animals, they were, when the fecal sample was brought up to the lab, similarly nothing, the high number of oocyst was there. In addition to this blood in the feces, the important thing was that all these were the heifers. The age of the animals was between the group was 1 year to 1.6, means 1.5 year old. That is one thing, age of the animal. Then diarrhea in the feces, and then they were having fever. Another important feature, that they were having almost 15-16 cases attended, they were having fever that was associated. So this coccidiosis, so such type of cases, no doubt diagnosis is not a difficult, but while dealing these animals, we must have in our mind that the coccidiosis may also occur in the heifers. The drug of choice, amprolium, highly effective, that can be recommended for 5 to 7 days, but in addition rehydration therapy is also needed at this point. Coccidiosis in poultry, everybody know that for broilers, this is a, you can say, it's a havoc, and large number of death occurs in broilers due to because of the cecal coccidiosis. And this is the life cycle, no need of discussion much. But the pathogenesis and clinical symptoms, I will discuss that slide. Three types of coccidiosis in poultry is recorded: intestinal, cecal, and rectal. And different symptom signs are there. This type of symptoms where only you can say diarrhea is there, mucoid, and somewhat whitish diarrhea is there. This is mainly observed in the intestinal coccidiosis. But if we talk about the cecal coccidiosis, bloody diarrhea, and animal, you can see it has died, and earlier it showed the bloody diarrhea. And if you open the cecum, you can see the presence, inflamed ceca, and blood clots are there in the ceca. So presence of blood is associated with the cecal coccidiosis, and mainly the rectal and intestinal, it is white diarrhea without blood. So if you talk about the treatment and control of poultry coccidiosis, there are two types of treatment or prevent. One is the prevention measure, another is the chemotherapy. For prevention, latest ionophores, monensin, meduramycin, and samduramycin, they are being used by the farmers and highly effective. For the chemotherapy, amprolium is still drug of choice, and in combination with sulfur drugs or independently, they can be tried for the treatment. So in conclusion, I would say naturally the protozoan diseases, they cause huge economic losses to the livestock industry. And at this junction, the most important need is the development of pen-side diagnostic tools. It is the need of the hour, because we can do the quick diagnosis at the field level. The sustainable control management is needed to combat the losses. And considering the emerging zoonosis, diseases like cryptosporidiasis, toxoplasmosis, which I did not discuss here because in animals it's not a much problem. It is a problem, but not so much. So there are certain protozoan diseases which are high genetic significance, like I told you, cryptosporidiosis, toxoplasmosis. So awareness to the farmers, to the professionals, that is most needed. So that's all conclusion from my side. And at this junction, I would make acknowledgement to my all PG scholars, all the PG graduates who have did masters and PhD from our division of veterinary parasitology at Jammu. These findings or little bit information which we got under these studies, even my ICRNF team, they have worked very hard in preparing me this presentation. So all my acknowledgements to PG scholars, ICRNF lab teams. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for giving me the time and listening me patiently. And if there is any suggestions, definitely there may be some lacunas. I would like that in addition to the questions you may have, I would definitely like that you make some suggestions so that I can improve myself for the future and next talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anish, for the excellent presentation on protozoan parasites of livestock. So as told by Dr. Anish, students can send their queries by email and Dr. Yadav will respond to their queries. I saw there are some questions by students mostly regarding tick control. Dr. Anish explained very well nicely about the tick control strategies as well as the problem of acaricicidal resistance in his lecture. So at the end, I am also thankful to the worthy Vice Chancellor and Dean College of Veterinary Sciences for organization of IDP webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bal. Thank you very much.